Hi guys, tonight we begin out on the open plains where the ground feels firm beneath your boots and the air has that sharp, honest chill that usually means winter is behaving itself. You can smell dry grass buried under a thin crust of frost, hear your horse breathe in slow clouds and feel the familiar weight of your bedroll bumping against your leg. Nothing feels urgent yet. The sky looks big and calm. Too calm. Snow has not started falling from above. It comes at you sideways, thin needles, carried on a wind that does not announce itself until it is already touching your face. In the distance, the horizon simply fades away like someone slowly erasing the world with a cold white cloth. You probably will not survive this if you think winter plays fair. Before anything turns desperate, before your fingers begin to sting and your ears start to burn, let me pause you for just a moment. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, and you keep walking. You're a cowboy in the winter of 1888, and up until today, winter has been unusually kind. That is not an exaggeration. One of the most widely accepted facts about this season is that much of the American plains experienced a mild autumn and early winter. Grass stayed exposed. Rivers did not lock up. Men slept out under the stars well into January wrapped in nothing more than wool and habit. Ranchers delayed bringing cattle south. Cowboys trusted routines that had worked year after year. The land taught them that lesson gently, and then it changed its mind. The wind is the first thing to notice. It does not howl yet, it presses. A steady pressure against your chest like someone leaning on you without asking. Snow moves with it, not drifting down but skimming across the ground, filling your footprints almost as soon as you make them. You stop to look back and there is already no sign you were ever there. You shift your bedroll higher on your shoulder. Canvas stiffens in the cold, and the leather straps creak in a way that sounds louder than it should. Your gloves smell faintly of horse sweat and old smoke. That smell is comforting. It means warmth existed recently, and maybe still does. Cowboys did not think about sleep the way you do now. Sleep was not a destination. It was a tool. Something you took in pieces when the land allowed it. Tonight, the land is not feeling generous. There is a strange quiet underneath the wind. Snow absorbs sound. Even the cattle nearby move without much noise, dark shapes blurring in and out of white. One quirky detail that shows up in old recollections is that some cowboys claimed the storm sounded like fabric tearing a soft, continuous rip that made it impossible to judge distance. Whether that was wind in frozen grass or simply the mind trying to give shape to fear is still uncertain. You try to orient yourself by instinct. You turn slightly into the wind the way you always have. Your face tightens. Eyelashes begin to stick together. The moisture from your breath freezes faster now, catching in your scarf. You pull it lower, leaving just enough space to breathe. That small decision matters more than you know. Some men believed sleeping early was safer, that resting before exhaustion set in could save strength. Others swore you should keep moving as long as possible. Historians still argue whether early rest or constant motion improved survival odds during the first hours of the Great Blizzard. Accounts contradict each other, and that tells you something important. No one had a rule that always worked. Your horse stops walking. You feel it through the reins before you see it. Animals know when the world has lost its edges. The horse shifts weight ears, pinned back, unsure which direction still exists. You move closer, resting your hand against its neck. The heat through the hide is real, solid, reassuring. Steam curls up, immediately torn apart by the wind. You consider bedding down right here, just a short rest, just enough to let the worst of the gusts pass. Cowboys often slept where they stood when weather turned quickly, trusting their bodies to wake them before danger set in. That trust was sometimes rewarded. Sometimes it was not. The ground feels harder now. Cold travels upward, straight through your boots. You stomp once, twice more to feel something than to warm yourself. Snow gathers in the folds of your coat, melting slightly, then stiffening. Each movement takes more effort. You kneel just for a moment to tighten a strap on your bedroll. The act of bending feels heavier than it should. When you stand again, the wind steals your breath so completely that you laugh short and sharp just to prove you still can. That laugh disappears immediately. Somewhere nearby, another cowboy calls out. The sound comes thin and strange, like it travelled a long way even though it probably did not. You answer without thinking, your voice already different than it was an hour ago. Quieter. Tighter. Sleep is not happening yet. Not real sleep. What you're doing instead is negotiating with the night. You're gathering small comforts and stacking them carefully. The smell of leather. The warmth of the horse. The memory of a stove back at the ranch. These thoughts are not sentimental. They are practical. They keep panic from taking over. The snow thickens. Your shoulders hunch automatically. Your world shrinks to what you can see directly in front of you, which is not much. You tell yourself you have slept in worse. You tell yourself morning always comes. Out here morning is not guaranteed. But for now you're still standing, still thinking, still choosing where and how you will try to rest. And that choice made in a storm that does not care who you are is where cowboy sleep during the great blizzard truly begins. You keep moving not because you're certain of direction, but because stopping feels like giving the storm permission to decide for you. The wind pushes harder now, and the snow thickens until the world looks unfinished, like a sketch someone never completed. Your sense of time begins to loosen. Minutes stretch, seconds blur. You have no watch you trust in weather like this anyway. You judge the passing of time by how often you blink and how much colder your face feels each time you open your eyes again. Just days ago, this land felt almost friendly. That is one of the most well-established facts surrounding the Great Blizzard of 1888. The winter began gently, so gently that many ranchers delayed seasonal movements they would normally never risk. Cowboys slept outside longer than usual sometimes without even unrolling full bedrolls, trusting the ground to stay dry and the sky to stay honest. The storm did not arrive like winter usually does. It arrived like a betrayal. You remember that warmth now, not clearly but emotionally. The way the ground still gave back a little heat after sunset. The way the stars felt close enough to count. That memory makes the present moment feel sharper by contrast. The cold now is not just temperature, it is absence. The absence of margin for error. Your coat snaps loudly as a gust catches it just right. Snow drives itself into every seam, every fold. Your gloves stiffen fingers inside them working harder just to bend. You flex them repeatedly, a slow rhythm you fall into without thinking. Cowboys learned early that movement did not need to be dramatic to be effective. Even small motions kept blood moving. Even small habits could keep sleep from turning into something permanent. There is an old odd detail that shows up in personal letters from this period. Some cowboys claimed the mild early winter made the eventual cold feel worse than it objectively was. They were not less prepared physically, they were less prepared mentally. Comfort had softened their expectations. Whether that psychological shift truly affected survival rates is debated, but the idea lingers because it feels true. You finally decide to stop walking. Not because you're tired, but because your horse stops again more insistently this time. It lowers its head, turning slightly away from the wind. You follow its lead. Horses had endured winters long before fences and ranches carved up the plains. Cowboys learned to trust them, especially when visibility vanished. You position yourself on the leeward side of the animal, pressing close enough to feel heat through your coat. The smell is stronger now. Hay-sweat leather. It cuts through the sterile scent of snow. You loosen the bedroll just enough to pull part of it around your shoulders, not fully unfolding it. Fully committing to sleep feels premature, risky. You crouch rather than sit. Sitting means settling. Settling means stillness. Stillness is dangerous. So you hover in that in-between position weight, shifting knees, bent muscles engaged just enough to remind your body it is still needed. Historians still argue whether the earliest fatalities during the blizzard came from exposure alone or from exhaustion layered on top of it. What is clear is that many men underestimated how quickly fatigue could sneak in when the body worked non-stop just to stay warm. Sleep deprivation was not a separate problem. It was woven directly into survival. The wind changes pitch. It rises, then drops like breathing. You find yourself matching it unconsciously, inhaling during the lull, exhaling when the gust hits. This is not something you learned from anyone. It is something your body remembers from other hard nights. You think briefly about fire, just briefly. You picture sparks, warmth, the way flames make shadows dance. Then you picture damp matches, snow-filled pockets, fuel buried under white. Fires failed as often as they succeeded in storms like this, and when they failed, they wasted precious energy. The thought passes. Instead, you focus on staying awake without forcing alertness. There is a narrow line between resting and surrendering. Cowboys learn to walk that line in winter. You lean your head against the horse's shoulder, eyes half closed, listening to its breathing. Slow, confident, alive. The storm does not ease. It presses on, patient and relentless. But so are you for now. You're not sleeping yet. You're waiting. Waiting for the moment when rest becomes necessary, when your body demands it whether you agree or not. And as the snow keeps coming, you realize that the way you sleep tonight will not be about comfort. It will be about timing, about knowing exactly when to give in just enough and no more. Eventually, movement stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like something your body quietly refuses to continue. Your legs still work, but they argue with you about it. Each step sends a dull complaint upward, not sharp pain, just a steady resistance. You accept that it is time to find a place to rest, even if that place is nothing more than a slight curve in the land. Night has fully arrived, though the sky offers no real clue. Snow blurs the difference between earth and air. There are no stars to guide you, no moon to measure time. The darkness feels padded, softened by white, yet somehow heavier. You notice how the cold changes texture at night. It no longer bites. It presses. A deep, full body pressure that makes you want to curl inward. This is where sleep becomes dangerous. One of the clearest historical realities of the Great Blizzard is that many cowboys were caught far from solid shelter. Line shacks existed, but they were scattered miles apart. Fences were new and unreliable. Trees were scarce on much of the open range. When the storm erased visibility, even experienced riders could miss a structure by just a few yards and never know it was there. You may be close to safety right now and have no idea. You dismount slowly, carefully, because rushing wastes energy. The ground feels uneven, though you cannot see why. Snow piles in strange ways around tufts of grass and half-buried rocks. You lead your horse a few steps, letting it choose, then stop when it stops. Animals often sought slight depressions, places where wind skimmed overhead rather than straight through. You trust that instinct again. You kneel and begin working with stiff fingers to arrange your bedroll. The canvas fights you. It wants to stay folded. You compromise, pulling it open just enough to insulate your back and shoulders. Lying flat feels wrong, too final. Instead, you settle into a crouch, lean your side, pressed against the horse, your back shielded by the roll. There is a strange intimacy in this position. Shared breath, shared heat. The horse shifts, adjusting, and you adjust with it. This kind of rest is not deep sleep. It is something closer to hovering. An odd detail appears in several survivor accounts. Some men claim they could feel the ground humming beneath them during the storm, a low vibration caused by wind passing over snow. Modern analysis suggests this was likely a combination of wind noise, muscle fatigue, and heightened awareness. Still, the descriptions are eerily similar. Your ears ring slightly, not painfully, just enough to notice. You pull your hat lower, tucking your ears in. The wool scratches, but that irritation helps. It keeps you present. Historians continue to debate how much sleep deprivation itself contributed to fatalities. Did men die because they slept, or because they could not rest enough beforehand? The truth likely sits somewhere in between. What you know right now is that your eyelids are heavy, and closing them feels like relief. You allow them to close part way. Time slips. You drift into brief moments where thought dissolves, replaced by sensation. The sound of wind, the warmth at your side, the weight of snow building on your shoulders. Then you snap back, opening your eyes, shifting your feet, reminding yourself that you're still here. You count breaths without realizing it. 1, 2, 3. You lose track and start again. This is how you rest without sleeping. Cowboys did not meditate in the modern sense, but they practiced something close to it out of necessity. Their cold creeps upward from the ground despite the bedroll. You are just lifting 1 foot at a time, pressing toes into the earth to keep blood flowing. You do not remove your boots. Removing boots in conditions like this was one of the most dangerous mistakes a man could make. Feet swollen from cold might never fit back in, and bare skin met frost too easily. Your horse sighs a long exhale that fogs the air. You take it as a signal that it is still calm enough, still alive enough to rest briefly. You lean in again, letting your forehead touch the coarse hair of its shoulder. This is not the sleep you imagined when the day began. There is no pillow, no sky to look at, no sense of safety. There is only balance. Somewhere out in the dark, other men are making similar decisions. Some will choose well, some will not. The storm will not react either way. For now you exist in this narrow space between waking and sleep, held upright by habit, instinct, and the quiet refusal to lie down completely. You stay close to the ground now, not lying down, not standing fully upright either. Somewhere between those two positions is where survival tends to live on nights like this. Your bedroll finally comes loose enough to be useful, the canvas creaking softly, as if protesting the cold along with you. You spread it in a shallow curve, letting it cradle your back and shoulders, while leaving your legs, bent boots still planted firmly in the snow-hardened earth. Blankets were never luxurious things out here. Wool itched when dry and felt heavier when damp. Oilcloth smelled faintly chemical and stiffened quickly in low temperatures. Yet these were the best tools available, and men trusted them the way sailors trusted ropes. There is strong evidence from ranch records and supply lists that many cowboys in 1888 carried lighter bedding than usual, a choice influenced by the unseasonably gentle weather leading up to the storm. It saved weight until it suddenly cost lives. You pull the blanket higher, careful not to cover your mouth completely. Breathing into fabric creates moisture, and moisture becomes ice. You have seen what happens when a man wakes with his face frozen to his own bedding. That memory is enough to keep a small opening clear even as your nose begins to ache from exposure. The wind does not stop. It slides over you now rather than hitting you directly thanks to the horse and the slight dip in the land. You feel the difference immediately. The cold remains, but it feels organized now, less chaotic. That small improvement feels enormous. Cowboys learned through repetition rather than instruction. There was no manual for sleeping through a blizzard. Knowledge passed through observation, through watching who woke up and who did not. One lesser-known habit mentioned in period diaries involves positioning the bedroll at a diagonal to the wind rather than directly parallel or perpendicular. The idea was to reduce pressure points where snow could pile too quickly. Whether it truly helped is difficult to measure, but men who believed in it kept doing it. Your fingers ache as you tuck the edge of the blanket beneath your body. The ache feels sharp at first, then dull, then oddly distant. That progression worries you. You rub your hands together slowly, not fast enough to waste energy, just enough to keep sensation alive. The friction produces a faint sound, almost lost in the wind. Rest comes in fragments. Your mind drifts, then snaps back. You think you hear voices, then realize it is the snow moving across itself. You picture a stove back at the ranch, black iron radiating heat, coffee simmering. The image feels warm but dangerous. Comforting thoughts can pull you too far inward. You let it go. There is disagreement among modern researchers about whether cowboys should have slept at all during the height of the storm. Some argue that any sleep increased risk dramatically. Others point out that complete exhaustion leads to collapse just as surely. What seems clear from survivor testimony is that controlled rest taken lightly and repeatedly offered the best chance. You're doing exactly that without knowing the theory behind it. Your horse shifts again, hooves scraping lightly. You adjust with it, your shoulder pressing into warm muscle. The animal's breathing stays steady, a slow rhythm that anchors you. Horses often remain standing through storms like this, conserving energy while staying alert. Being near that steadiness helps regulate your own body without conscious effort. Snow gathers on your hat brim. You brush it away once, then stop bothering. The motion costs more heat than the snow itself. Instead, you lower your head slightly, letting it accumulate as insulation. It feels counterintuitive, but it works. Fresh snow traps air traps warmth. A curious note appears in one account written years later. A cowboy claimed that the snow on his bedroll formed a hard shell overnight, creating a windbreak that likely saved him. At the time, he thought he was being buried. In reality, the storm built him a shield. Experiences like that complicate the way this event is remembered. Your breathing slows despite your effort to stay alert. You allow it, trusting yourself to wake if things shift. Muscles loosen slightly, not fully, just enough. This is rest stripped down to its bare minimum. The cold works patiently. It searches for gaps, ankles, wrists, neck. You respond instinctively, tucking, tightening, adjusting. Each movement is small, deliberate. You have learned not to thrash. Thrashing burns fuel you cannot replace. The world feels very small now. There is no horizon, no destination. Just this patch of ground, this animal beside you, this narrow window of survivable warmth. Sleep presses gently at the edges of your awareness, not as temptation, but as necessity. You do not fight it, you manage it. And in that quiet management wrapped in scratchy wool and stubborn routine, you begin to understand that cowboy sleep during the great blizzard was never about comfort. It was about compromise, about giving the body just enough rest to continue saying no to the cold. You become aware of the cattle before you see them clearly. Dark shapes drift in and out of the white, moving slowly, deliberately, like thoughts forming and dissolving. Their presence changes the air around you. It smells heavier, warmer, not comfortable, but different enough to notice. You understand instinctively why some cowboys chose to sleep with the herd during storms like this, even when every part of that idea felt risky. Cattle generate heat in surprising amounts. A tightly grouped herd can raise the temperature in its center by several degrees, enough to mean the difference between numbness and circulation. Ranch journals from the late 19th century note that men often position themselves downwind of cattle during extreme cold, using the animals as living windbreaks. It was never ideal, but it was effective, often enough to become practice. You edge closer, careful not to startle them. A sudden movement could trigger panic, and panic among hundreds of pounds of muscle and horn is not something you want to be near while half frozen. You move slowly, announcing yourself with soft sounds, a low murmur carried away by the wind before it can reach far. The cattle shift, but do not scatter. They're conserving energy just like you. You settle near the outer edge of the group rather than pushing into the center. Being too close risks being stepped on. Too far and you lose the benefit of their heat. This balance mirrors everything else about tonight. Always too much or too little. Never perfect. The ground here feels different. Packed tighter by hooves, insulated by churned snow and manure frozen together. The smell is strong now. Earthy. Sharp. Not pleasant, but unmistakably alive. You pull your bedroll closer, angling it to block the wind that snakes between animal bodies. The cattle breathe steadily, steam rising and vanishing in the dark. Some old hands swore sleeping near cattle improved survival odds. Others refused outright, saying the risk of trampling outweighed any warmth gained. The truth is messy. Records show both outcomes: men saved by shared heat, men injured or killed by sudden movement in the dark. No consensus ever formed because the storm did not offer controlled conditions. Your eyes close briefly, not fully. Just enough for your thoughts to blur. You catch yourself imagining you're lying on a wooden floor, barn walls around you, haystack nearby. The illusion is strong enough that you straighten suddenly, heart kicking harder. You force your eyes open wider, grounding yourself in the smell, the cold, the sound of wind scraping snow across hide. This is another thing cowboys learned without words. The mind tries to help by creating comfort. Sometimes that help is dangerous. You counter it by naming what you feel: cold on your cheek, pressure at your knees, heat at your side. This quiet inventory keeps you awake enough. A lesser-known detail appears in a handful of survivor recollections. Some men claimed cattle instinctively arranged themselves to shield weaker members from wind, forming rough semicircles. Whether humans benefited intentionally or accidentally from this behavior remains unclear, but the descriptions repeat often enough to suggest something real was happening. Your fingers stiffen again. You tuck them beneath your arm, shoulders hunched, spine curved inward. This posture is not elegant, it is efficient. Your breathing grows shallow, not from fear, but from cold air scraping your lungs. You slow it deliberately, letting each breath warm slightly before leaving you. The cattle settle further, hooves stop shifting, bodies press closer together. The storm continues its steady assault, but here, inside this living mass, the wind loses some of its bite. You feel it in small ways: less sting on your face, less urgency in your muscles. Debate continues among modern historians about how much animal proximity truly altered outcomes during the blizzard. What cannot be disputed is that many men chose it, remembered it, and spoke about it later as a defining experience. That tells you how powerful it felt in the moment. Your head dips. You catch it before it falls too far. You allow yourself another fragment of rest. Seconds stretch, then minutes. You wake yourself by shifting weight, stamping one foot, lightly reasserting presence. The night drags on. There is no sense of progress, only endurance. But here, pressed against warmth that breathes and moves, you understand why cowboys sometimes trusted animals more than shelters. Wood could collapse, fires could fail. Cattle, stubborn and simple, just kept standing. You stay with them, sharing space, sharing heat, sharing the long grinding hours until the storm decides to loosen its grip. The sound becomes the hardest part to escape. Not loud exactly, but constant. Wind sliding over snow creates a layered noise, soft and abrasive at the same time, like sand poured slowly across stretched fabric. It never settles into a rhythm. Just when your ears begin to adjust, the pitch shifts, rising slightly, then flattening out again. That unpredictability keeps you from fully relaxing. You notice how the storm vibrates through everything. The cattle feel it. You feel it. Even the ground seems to carry a faint tremor, as if the plains themselves are restless. Your body responds without permission. Muscles tense, then release, then tense again. This is not panic. It is vigilance, a low-level readiness that refuses to shut off. People who lived through the blizzard often describe the noise as more exhausting than the cold. Later recollections mention men shouting just to prove their own voices still existed even when no one could hear them. Continuous sound disrupts rest in subtle ways, preventing the mind from slipping fully into sleep. You're experiencing that now. Each time your thoughts soften, a gust sharpens them again. You tilt your head slightly, changing how the sound reaches your ears. The cattle block some of it, their bodies breaking the wind into uneven currents. That helps. You press closer to the horse again, using its bulk as an anchor. Its breathing remains steady, unbothered by the chaos around it. Animals do not imagine danger beyond what they sense. That simplicity feels calming. Snow taps against your coat, a faint staccato you barely notice until it stops. The silence that follows is startling, like pressure released suddenly. You open your eyes wider, alert. Then the wind returns, filling the gap immediately. The contrast leaves you disoriented. Some men later claim they could not tell if they had slept at all during the worst hours of the storm. Their memories blurred into a continuous state of half-awareness. Researchers examining these accounts suggest the body may have entered brief micro-rests, seconds or minutes long, without conscious recognition. These fragments might have been enough to preserve function without inviting deeper danger. You shift your weight again. Your knees protest quietly. Cold settles in joints first, then works outward. You rub one thigh with a gloved hand, slow circles encouraging blood flow. The friction produces a faint warmth that fades quickly, but leaves sensation behind. Sensation matters. The cattle stir slightly, a ripple moving through the group. Someone coughs nearby, human, close. That sound brings a strange comfort. It reminds you that you're not the only one measuring time in breaths and movements. Others are enduring the same assault, listening to the same windscrape across the world. An unusual note appears in one diary written years after the event. The writer claimed the storm produced a tone that seemed to sit inside his head, rather than outside it, making him feel disconnected from his body. Modern explanations point to sensory overload combined with fatigue. Still, the description matches what you feel now. A narrowing, a slight separation. You counter it by grounding yourself again. You name things silently: horse, blanket, snow, breath. The act of naming keeps your mind tethered to your body. Cowboys did this without calling it technique. It was instinct refined by repetition. The noise continues. It does not grow worse. It does not improve. It simply persists. That persistence wears at you more than sudden violence would. You find yourself longing for a clear howl, a single dramatic gust, something that might exhaust itself. But the storm has no interest in drama. Sleep remains shallow, elusive. You let your eyes close for a moment, then open them again. Each cycle feels like a negotiation. You give the night a little rest. It gives you a little time. As the hours stretch on, you realize that the sound of the blizzard is shaping your sleep more than the cold itself. It keeps you hovering, never fully dropping, never fully waking. This suspended state is uncomfortable, but it is survivable. And for now, survivable is enough. Your body begins to teach you things your mind never learned in daylight. Subtle adjustments, tiny shifts in posture, a quiet awareness of circulation moving or slowing. Cowboys did not talk much about these skills, but they practiced them every winter. Out here, sleep is not a shutdown. It is a managed state. You keep your knees bent, never locking them. Locked joints invite stillness, and stillness invites cold. Your spine stays slightly curved, protecting your core. When your shoulders sag too much, you correct them, not sharply, just enough to keep muscles engaged. This half-effort posture feels strange, but it allows you to rest without fully surrendering control. Many first-hand accounts from the era describe men sleeping in what they called listening positions. Not flat, not curled, balanced, ears open, body ready. Ranch hands developed this without instruction. It came from nights like this when lying down felt like a promise you were not ready to make. You notice how your breathing changes when you stop thinking about it. It grows shallow, economical. Each breath warms slightly before leaving you. You turn your head just enough to keep your breath from freezing against your collar. Moisture management becomes second nature. You no longer think of it as technique. It is simply what you do. There is a strange clarity that comes with prolonged cold. Thoughts narrow, distractions fall away. You're not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow. You're thinking about toes, fingers, and whether the ache in your calf is improving or fading. Cowboys later described this state as peaceful even when conditions were brutal. That calm was not comfort. It was focus. Some period observers noted that experienced range riders often survived storms better than newer hands even when their equipment was similar. One explanation offered by later analysts is that seasoned cowboys understood how to rest without sleeping deeply. They listened to their bodies more closely. They trusted discomfort as information rather than something to escape. You test sensation in your hands again. You flex each finger individually, slow and deliberate. The motion feels clumsy but possible. That is good enough. You press your palms briefly against the horse, absorbing warmth, then pull them back under your arms. You ration that heat, taking it in small doses rather than clinging too long. A curious detail surfaces in a few personal letters from the time. Some cowboys claim they could tell how close dawn was by the quality of their own fatigue rather than by light. The body, they said, recognized when the night was nearing its end. Whether this was intuition or coincidence is uncertain, but the idea appears often enough to feel meaningful. You shift your feet again. Snow crunches softly beneath your boots. The sound feels louder than it should. Everything feels amplified when the world is reduced to a small circle around you. You pause, listening. No stampede, no sudden movement, just wind and breath and the low presence of animals. The cold continues its patient work. It dulls pain, softens urgency. This is the most dangerous phase when discomfort fades into something almost pleasant. You recognize it immediately. You straighten slightly, force your shoulders back, reintroduce effort. Comfort here is not your friend. There has long been disagreement among historians about how often hypothermia victims felt calm before collapse. Some accounts emphasize panic, others emphasize tranquility. What seems consistent is the transition, the moment when resistance feels unnecessary. You do not let yourself linger there. Instead, you anchor yourself with routine. You repeat small movements in the same order: hands, feet, shoulders, breath. This sequence gives shape to time. It creates milestones in a night otherwise without markers. Sleep brushes against you again, not heavily, more like a suggestion. You allow your eyes to close briefly, trusting your body to interrupt if danger rises. Seconds stretch. You open them again. The world looks the same. That familiarity reassures you. You're not waiting for rescue. You're not dreaming of warmth. You're doing the work of staying alive quietly, patiently, without drama. And in that quiet labor, guided by instinct, sharpened through years of cold nights, you rest just enough to continue saying no to the storm. You try to shift your feet again and feel the resistance immediately. Leather does not bend the way it did hours ago. It answers you slowly, reluctantly, like it needs convincing. Your boots have stiffened into unfamiliar shapes, the soles less flexible, the uppers holding the memory of how they froze while you were not looking. This is one of the quiet miseries of winter nights on the plains. Nothing breaks, nothing snaps. Things simply refuse. You lift one heel, then the other, testing what still works. The movement sends a dull vibration up your legs, not painful, just heavy. You make a point of not sitting down fully. Sitting invites removal. Removal invites regret. Cowboys learned early that taking boots off in extreme cold often meant never getting them back on. Feet swelled, skin numbed, laces froze into place. A man might rest for comfort and wake without the ability to stand. You lean more heavily against the horse while you work your ankles, slowly rolling them inside the boots. The horse shifts in response, steady but accommodating. Its warmth seeps through your coat in small, reliable waves. You breathe with it again, matching its pace without thinking. There is a particular smell that frozen leather gives off. Dry, slightly sharp. It mixes with wool and sweat and snow into something uniquely winter-bound. Later in life, men who survive storms like this often claim they could smell danger returning years afterward simply by catching a similar scent. Memory anchors itself in strange places. You flex your toes, deliberately counting the movement. 1, 2, 3. The sensation is muted, but it exists. That is what matters. You whisper nothing. You conserve breath. Sound feels like wasted warmth now. Some cowboys swore by rubbing snow onto stiff boots to soften them. Others insisted the opposite, saying moisture only worsened the freeze. No clear answer ever settled the matter. What you know is what your body tells you right now. Slow movement helps. Forcing it does not. You become aware of how heavy your saddle feels, even though it still hangs where it always has. Leather and metal pull downward, pressing against muscles already tired. A few men in similar storms reportedly loosened tack to reduce strain, while others refused, fearing they might not manage it again later. You choose the middle path, adjusting just enough to ease pressure without changing too much. Sleep presses closer now, not as relief but as fog. Thoughts blur at the edges. You imagine warmth again, a stove, a wall, a place where you could stretch your legs fully. The image is vivid enough that your body responds, loosening slightly. You catch it just in time. You straighten, inhale sharply through your nose, then slow your breathing again. The shock clears your head. Cowboys did not talk about discipline much, but nights like this demanded it. The discipline to stay uncomfortable, to refuse the body when it asked for the wrong kind of rest. A few recollections from the period mention men waking to find their boots frozen to the ground, snow hardened around them like mortar. Breaking free-cost energy they did not have. Others remembered waking unable to feel their feet at all, standing only because habit carried them upright. These stories circulated quietly afterward, not as warnings but as facts. This is what winter could do. You glance downward again, checking the outline of your boots under the snow. They are still where you left them, still shaped like something wearable. That small reassurance steadies you. Your calves ache now, a deep, insistent soreness. You press your weight from one leg to the other, never fully resting either. This slow rocking becomes a rhythm. It keeps blood moving. It gives time a shape. The cattle nearby settle further, their movement minimal now. Heat radiates gently from their clustered bodies. You feel it along one side, uneven but welcome. You adjust your bedroll again, pulling it tighter around your back, leaving your legs free enough to move. There is a strange patience to cold nights. They do not rush you, they simply wait. You match that patience minute by minute, breath by breath. You allow your eyes to close again, just briefly. Your head dips, your chin touches your chest. You open your eyes, immediately correcting posture, re-engaging muscles. This cycle repeats. It feels endless, but it works. Sleep, when it comes, arrives only in fragments. A few heartbeats long, a few breaths deep. Enough to dull the ache, but not enough to pull you under. You accept that this is all the rest you will get for now. Your boots remain on. Your feet still answer when asked. That alone feels like success. And as the storm continues to grind against the plains, you hold on to that success, quietly knowing that morning, whenever it decides to arrive, will demand that you stand up and walk away from this night. The idea of fire drifts through your thoughts the way warmth always does, tempting and unreliable. You picture a flame cupped low to the ground, shielded by gloved hands coaxed from nothing into something alive. Then you feel the wind press harder, hear it scrape snow across the earth, and the image dissolves. Tonight is not friendly to sparks. You reach into your pocket anyway, fingers brushing the familiar shapes, matches, damp, cold. Their paper heads feel soft wrong. Even if one caught, even if you managed to shield it long enough to lick at kindling, the effort might cost more heat than it gave back. Out here, wasted effort can be fatal. Cowboys learn to calculate warmth like currency. Spend too much at once and you go bankrupt fast. There are accounts from the time that describe men carrying bits of pitch-twisted cloth or even grease-soaked rags meant for quick fires. Some succeeded. Others watched their precious fuel vanish into the wind in seconds. One man wrote later that he felt colder after trying to light a fire than he did before, not because the temperature dropped, but because hope had. You pull your hand back out of your pocket and tuck it under your arm again. Decision made. No fire, not tonight. Your horse shifts its weight tail, flicking uselessly against the snow. You feel its flank tighten briefly, then relax. Animals hate fire in storms anyway. The unpredictability unnerves them. Staying close to it, calm and steady, feels safer than introducing chaos. The cold has settled into your shoulders, now a deep ache that does not sting but weighs. You roll them slowly one at a time, careful not to disturb your balance. The movement produces a faint crackle as frozen fabric rubs against itself. You pause listening, making sure the sound does not trigger anything nearby. The cattle remain still. There is a strange clarity that comes when you accept what will not happen. No fire, no shelter, no rescue riding in from the dark. That acceptance quiets something inside you. You stop negotiating with the night and start working with it. Some survivors later said that giving up on fire early helped them conserve energy and focus on body heat instead. Others insisted a successful fire saved their lives. The stories conflict, but they share one thing. Every man remembered the moment he chose. That choice stayed sharp long after the cold faded. You lean into the horse again, pressing your side firmly, letting its warmth soak through layers of wool and canvas. The heat is not dramatic. It does not flood you. It seeps. That slow transfer feels sustainable. You adjust your bedroll, tucking one corner tighter to block a narrow channel of wind that found its way in. Snow builds along the edges of your setup, piling gently against canvas and hide. You let it. Fresh snow insulates. Men who brushed it away constantly often expose themselves to more cold in the long run. The storm in its own way helps you if you allow it to. Your breathing stays slow, controlled. Each exhale fogs briefly before vanishing. You keep your mouth, partially covered nose exposed just enough to avoid icing fabric to skin. Small details like this separate manageable discomfort from disaster. Your eyes grow heavy again. This time the pull feels different. Not dreamy, heavy. You recognize it immediately. This is the moment many men later described as the most dangerous. When exhaustion feels reasonable, when lying down seems like efficiency rather than surrender. You respond by doing something boring and deliberate. You count breaths again. Not because it relaxes you, but because it occupies you. 1, 2, 3. You lose track and start over. The repetition keeps your mind engaged without exciting it. The wind does not care what you decide. It continues its steady work, pushing snow across the plains, reshaping the land inch by inch. Somewhere nearby, someone else may be striking a match right now, hands shaking, heart hopeful. Somewhere else a man may be lying down for just a minute. You stay where you are, upright enough, alert enough, warmth borrowed rather than built. Fire will come again in your life, just not tonight. Time stops behaving the way you remember. It no longer moves forward in a clean line. It pools, it stretches, it thins out until it feels almost transparent. You have the sense that hours are passing, but you could not swear to it. What you do know is that your body has entered a rhythm, and that rhythm depends on not staying still for too long. You begin to rest in turns, even though you are alone. A few minutes with your eyes closed, head leaning into the horse's warmth. Then a correction, a shift, a reminder to your muscles that they are still required. Cowboys often spoke later about sleeping in shifts during storms, even when no one else was present. The shift was internal, awareness handing control back and forth with fatigue. You let your eyes close again. Not all the way. Just enough for the world to soften. Sounds blur. The wind becomes less sharp at the edges. Your thoughts drift not into dreams but into fragments. A a fence line, a laugh from weeks ago, the taste of coffee thick with grounds. These images float by without pulling you under. Then your body nudges you awake. Not violently, just a quiet insistence. Your head lifts, your shoulders tense. You inhale more deeply, feeling the cold bite your lungs just enough to clear the fog. You're still here, still upright. This pattern repeats. Over and over. Each cycle feels slightly heavier than the last, but it works. Men who survived storms like this often struggled later to describe how they rested. They did not sleep in the way people expect sleep to look. They skimmed its surface, never diving. Your legs tremble faintly now, not from fear, but from holding tension for so long. You ease it by shifting weight, bending one knee more deeply than the other. The movement feels stiff but controlled. You do not rush it. Sudden motion wastes warmth and invites mistakes. Nearby, the cattle remain packed tightly together. Their collective presence changes the sound of the storm, breaking it into uneven waves. You use those waves as markers. When the wind rises, you stay more alert. When it dips, you allow yourself a longer pause. This is how you measure time now. At some point, you realize your jaw has been clenched. You force it to relax, mouth opening slightly beneath the scarf. The release sends a small shiver through your face. Tiny adjustments like this matter. They prevent pain from hiding in places you forget to check. There is a memory that surfaces uninvited. Someone once joked that the real danger of winter sleep was boredom, standing in the cold doing nothing dramatic, waiting. You almost smile at that now. Boredom would be a luxury. This waiting is work. Your hands feel thick inside your gloves, fingers less precise. You test them again, touching thumb to fingertip in slow sequence. The sensation is dulled, but the motion completes. Good. You tuck them back under your arms, pressing them against your ribs, trapping warmth where it does the most good. You notice that your thoughts have slowed. Not scattered, just slower. Each idea takes longer to form, longer to fade. This could be exhaustion. It could be adaptation. You treat it cautiously like everything else tonight. Men who lived through the blizzard later disagreed about whether resting in short bursts helped or harmed them. Some credited it with saving their lives. Others believed it nearly ended them. The truth likely depends on countless small details. Body size, clothing, position, luck. You do not have the luxury of theory. You have only what feels survivable in this moment. You allow another pause. Your eyes close. Your head rests more fully against the horse. Its warmth feels deeper now, as if your body has learned how to absorb it better. You breathe slowly, carefully aware of each inhale and exhale without forcing them. This time, when your eyes open again, you're not sure how long they were closed. That uncertainty makes your chest tighten briefly. You respond by grounding yourself again. Cold air on skin, snow against fabric, weight in your boots. You shift your feet, stamp lightly, reassert presence. The night offers no encouragement, no sign that it's nearly done, but you sense a subtle change in yourself, not strength, endurance, a quiet acceptance that this is how things are for now. You continue the pattern, rest, correct, breathe, adjust. Each repetition carries you forward without requiring hope. Hope would be too heavy to carry right now. Somewhere in the distance, the wind changes direction slightly. You feel it before you hear it, a different pressure against your back. The cattle adjust in response. You adjust with them, turning just enough to keep your bedroll blocking the new angle. Your body responds more slowly now, but it still responds. That is enough. You do not aim for comfort. You aim for continuity. Sleep brushes against you again, gentle and persistent. You do not push it away. You shape it. You keep it shallow. You let it pass through you without letting it take you. This is how cowboys endured nights like this. Not by conquering the cold, not by outlasting it, but by sharing time with it, one small shift at a time until the storm loosened its grip. or the body refuse to continue. For now your body continues. Your breath begins to change shape. You notice it first as a faint resistance when you inhale, like the air has thickened slightly. Each exhale leaves behind a fragile crust along the edge of your scarf and collar, a delicate lace of ice that forms and breaks away as you move. You adjust instinctively, angling your face so the moisture drifts off to the side instead of settling back onto you. Breathing is no longer automatic. It requires attention. Too shallow and your chest tightens. Too deep and the cold air stings all the way down, making you cough. You find the middle ground slow and steady, letting each breath warm itself before leaving. Cowboys who survived nights like this often remembered their breath more clearly than anything else. It became the measure of time, the proof of life. You pull the edge of your blanket slightly higher, then stop. Covering too much traps moisture. Moisture freezes, frozen fabric sticks. You've heard stories of men waking with their faces bonded to their bedding, skin tearing when they tried to move. You leave a narrow channel open, just enough space for air to escape cleanly. It feels exposed, but exposure is safer than sealing yourself in. Your eyelashes feel heavy now. When you blink, they resist, faintly glued together by frost. You open them wider, breaking the seal. Tiny crystals fall away. You blink again, slower this time, careful not to let the ice build too thick. Vision matters. Even blurred vision is better than none. The wind presses again, stronger for a moment, then eases. Snow shifts along your shoulders, sliding into new shapes. You let it stay. The weight feels insulating. Men who survived harsh winters learned quickly that snow could be both threat and shelter, depending on how you treated it. Your chest rises and falls beneath layers of wool. You feel your heartbeat now, not fast, but pronounced. Each beat sends a small pulse of warmth outward, quickly stolen by the cold. Still it is reassuring. As long as it keeps that rhythm, you are still in this. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs again. The sound is weaker this time. You do not call out. Sound feels too fragile to waste. You trust that if help is needed, it will come without shouting. Tonight is not a night for noise. You adjust your scarf again, loosening it slightly where ice has begun to form. The fabric cracks faintly as it moves stiff with frost. You flex your neck, easing stiffness before it locks in. Small discomforts multiply quickly if ignored. Men who lived through the blizzard later struggle to explain how quickly breathing became a problem. Cold air dries the lungs, exhaustion dulls awareness. One moment you're breathing normally, the next every breath feels like work. You watch for that shift, carefully ready to respond if it comes. Your mouth tastes dry. You swallow, feeling the motion drag. Water would help, but your canteen is likely frozen solid by now. Even if it were not drinking, cold water could steal more heat than it gives. You leave it alone, focusing instead on keeping what warmth you have. The horse beside you exhales a long, slow breath. Steam rises, curls, disappears. You time your breathing with it again, letting its rhythm guide yours. Animals rarely overthink breath. They take what they need. That simplicity helps. Your thoughts drift briefly towards sleep again, heavier this time. Not drifting, pulling. You respond by straightening your spine, slightly engaging muscles that have grown lazy. The movement sends a mild ache through your back, sharp enough to wake you fully. Pain in small controlled doses is useful tonight. There is a story told among ranch hands years later about a man who wrapped his head completely sealing in his breath for warmth. He slept deeply for hours and never woke. Others told the same story differently, changing details, changing the ending. What remained consistent was the warning. Breath needs space. You take another inventory. Fingers move. Toes respond slowly but clearly. Face stings where it is exposed. Good. Stinging means sensation. You accept the discomfort, welcome it even. It tells you where you still exist. Snow continues its steady work reshaping the ground around you. You feel it settle against your boots, your calves, your bedroll. The storm feels endless, but your body has adapted to its presence. Not comfortably, effectively. Your breathing stays steady. You focus on the sound it makes inside your scarf, soft and repetitive. It becomes almost soothing, a quiet counterpoint to the wind. You allow your eyes to close again for a moment, trusting your body to interrupt if something shifts. This time, when they open, you feel slightly disoriented. Not lost, just detached. You correct, immediately stamping one foot lightly then the other. The motion sends a jolt through your legs, reasserting connection. Men who endured nights like this often described a thin line between rest and disappearance. You are walking that line now, carefully, deliberately. Every breath is a decision. Every adjustment matters. You continue breathing, continue feeling, continue choosing wakefulness in small pieces. The storm remains, but so do you. You shift closer to your horse without fully realizing you are doing it. The movement feels natural, like gravity pulling you towards something solid and familiar. The animal stands with quiet endurance, head lowered slightly, breath slow and even. Its presence anchors you more than any landmark ever could. In storms like this, horses were not just transportation. They were warning systems, heaters and companions rolled into one. You rest your gloved hand against its shoulder again, fingers sinking lightly into coarse winter hair. Heat seeps through the contact, subtle but steady. You take it in short intervals, pressing close, then easing back, careful not to overdo it. Too much reliance invites stillness. Stillness invites trouble. This balance has become second nature now. Horses sense changes in the storm before humans do. You feel it when the animal shifts its stance, widening its base, turning slightly. The wind has changed direction again. You follow, rotating just enough to keep your back shielded, your bedroll angled, to catch less of the blast. You trust this instinct more than your own tired judgment. Men who rode the open range often spoke later about how their horses saved them without trying. A twitch of muscle, a refusal to move, a sudden stop that made no sense until hours later. Those small signals meant the difference between drifting deeper into danger and staying put long enough to survive. Tonight you're listening closely. Your knees ache from holding tension for so long. You ease one down slightly, then bring it back up, careful not to collapse. The movement sends warmth briefly through your thigh before it fades. You repeat the motion on the other side. This slow cycle keeps circulation alive without draining strength. The horse snorts softly, a puff of steam exploding into the cold air. The sound startles you just enough to reset your awareness. You welcome it. Startle keeps you sharp. You rub the animal's neck once, not for comfort, but acknowledgement. It is doing its part. You are doing yours. Some men later described sleeping so close to their horses that they felt the animals breathing against them all night, ribs expanding and contracting inches away. Others kept more distance, afraid of being knocked over if the horse spooked. Both approaches worked and failed in different cases. What mattered most was attention. You are paying attention. Your thoughts slow again, thick and syrupy. The night presses in from all sides, not violently, but persistently. You catch yourself imagining leaning fully into the horse, letting it support your weight completely. The idea feels tempting. You resist it, gently straightening just enough to keep responsibility on your own muscles. Snow gathers along the horse's back, outlining its shape in white. It does not shake it off. It allows the accumulation, letting the layer insulate rather than irritate. You take the hint and stop brushing snow from your own shoulders. The extra weight feels manageable, even helpful. You listen to the sound of the horse chewing, slowly, methodically. It found something edible beneath the snow, perhaps old grass, perhaps habit. The hound grounds you. Life continues in small, stubborn ways even here. Your breath fogs and freezes again along your scarf. You are just maintaining that narrow escape for moisture. You are tired now in a deeper way, not sharp exhaustion, a dull, spreading heaviness. You accept it without letting it rule you. Men who survived nights like this often spoke of trusting their horses more than themselves by the end. Fatigue dulls human judgment first. Animals rely on simpler signals: cold, wind, balance. You lean into that simplicity, now letting the horse's steadiness guide your own. You allow your eyes to close for a few heartbeats, head angled, so your breath escapes cleanly. The horse shifts slightly, muscles rippling beneath your hand. The movement wakes you immediately. You open your eyes, alert again, grateful for the interruption. This partnership is quiet and unspoken. No commands, no reins, just shared endurance. You are two living bodies resisting the same force in different ways. The storm does not ease. It does not intensify either. It simply continues. You adjust again, matching the horse's stance, protecting your back, guarding your breath. Sleep remains shallow, broken, controlled. That is enough. With the horse beside you, alert and steady, you feel less alone in the work of staying upright. You breathe. You listen. You follow the subtle shifts of the animal that knows this land better than you ever could. And together, without ceremony, you hold your ground against the night. Your mind begins to wander in unfamiliar ways, not drifting exactly, but circling. Thoughts repeat themselves with small changes like footsteps tracing the same path through snow. You notice it happening, and do not panic. This kind of mental looping is common when the body is tired but unwilling to surrender. Cowboys learn to work with it rather than fight it. You give your mind something simple to hold. A memory of a trail ride, the sound of tack creaking in warmer weather, the rhythm of hooves on dry ground. You do not try to make the memory vivid. You keep it plain. Decoration invites emotion, and emotion costs energy. The cold presses gently but persistently. It no longer shocks you. It has become a background presence, like the hum of a distant machine. That is both good and dangerous. When cold becomes familiar, it is easy to forget how much of your attention it still deserves. You check your hands again. The motion feels automatic now. Thumb to finger, pressure, release. The sensation is faint but present. You nod once satisfied. You do the same with your toes, shifting your weight to encourage movement. Your calves burn slightly, then settle. The burn reassures you more than comfort ever could. Fear arrives quietly, not as panic, as a question. What if you doze too long this time? What if you miss the moment when correction is needed? You acknowledge the thought without engaging it. Cowboys often spoke later about fear being most dangerous when argued with. If you try to defeat it, it grows louder. If you accept its presence, it stays manageable. You breathe through the question and let it pass. The night feels endless now, but you sense a subtle change in the air. Not warmth, not light. Something else. A slight thinning of the pressure. A barely perceptible easing. It might be imagination. It might be real. You do not rely on it either way. Your horse shifts again, stamping one hoof lightly before settling. The sound travels through the ground into your feet. Vibration wakes parts of you that were beginning to dull. You straighten your back, roll your shoulders, and re-establish balance. The movement costs effort, but the cost is worth paying. Men who later described nights like this often mentioned small rituals they developed without realizing it. Counting movements, repeating phrases silently, touching the same piece of gear in the same order. These rituals gave structure to time when clocks meant nothing. You find yourself rubbing the edge of your bedroll in a slow, repetitive motion. Canvas rough beneath your glove. That texture keeps you anchored. You notice how your thoughts slow further, each one taking longer to arrive, longer to leave. This slowness is deceptive. It can feel peaceful. It can feel safe. You respond by doing something mildly uncomfortable. You adjust your stance, bending a little deeper at the knees, forcing muscles to engage. The discomfort sharpens you just enough. Snow continues to build around you, reshaping the ground into unfamiliar contours. Your boots are half buried now. You lift one foot, slowly breaking the crust, then set it back down. The effort reminds you that you are still capable of movement. That matters more than speed. You feel strangely detached from your name, your past, your plans. Those things seem far away, unnecessary. There is only the body and the night and the small set of tasks required to keep them in conversation. Cowboys often describe this narrowing as both frightening and clarifying. Everything extraneous falls away. Your breath remains steady. You listen to it closely, letting the sound fill the space inside your scarf. Inhale. Exhale. Each cycle feels complete. You avoid breathing too deeply. You avoid breathing too shallowly. Balance again. Somewhere in the distance, the wind changes pitch, dropping slightly, then rising again. The cattle murmur a low collective sound that fades quickly. You stay alert through the change, then allow yourself to soften again when it passes. You allow your eyes to close for another short interval. This time you do not fight the heaviness as hard. You trust your body to interrupt when necessary. Your head dips forward, chin brushing your chest. Almost immediately a jolt of cold air sneaks under your scarf, stinging your neck. You straighten eyes, open, heart beating a little faster. Lesson reinforced. Men who endured nights like this often said the mind learned faster than the body. It learned what not to do. It learned which comforts were false. It learned that survival did not require bravery, only persistence. You return to your quiet inventory, hands, feet, breath, balance. Each check passes, not perfectly, but adequately. The storm continues its steady work, indifferent and thorough. You do not challenge it. You coexist with it. You make yourself small and deliberate and present. Sleep remains nearby like a familiar animal pacing just outside your reach. You do not chase it. You do not flee it. You let it circle while you keep doing what works. And in the careful negotiation using nothing but attention and restraint, you hold your place in the night a little longer. You think about lying down. The thought arrives quietly without drama or almost reasonable. Your legs are tired. Your back aches. The ground looks oddly inviting, now smoothed by snow, softened by time. Just for a minute, you tell yourself, just to rest properly. The idea feels logical, even kind. That is what makes it dangerous. You have heard stories like this before, though never in such detail. Men who decided to lie flat, promising themselves they would get up again soon. Men who felt relief spread through their bodies the moment they stopped holding themselves upright. Relief so complete it felt like success. You recognize the temptation now because it feels familiar, almost friendly. You do not lie down. Instead, you shift your weight again, deliberately uncomfortable, deliberately alert. Your thighs tremble briefly in protest, then settle into a dull ache. The ache grounds you. It reminds you that your body is still working, still resisting. The snow at your feet looks deeper than before. It has crept up around your boots, insulating them while also threatening to trap them. You lift one foot slowly, then the other, breaking the crust before it hardens too much. The motion costs energy, but it preserves choice. Being able to move is everything. Your breath fogs the air in short bursts. You watch it appear and vanish, a visible reminder that something warm is still happening inside you. You keep your face angled just right, letting moisture escape without settling back onto your skin. These small adjustments have become automatic now, a language your body speaks fluently. Your horse shifts again, closer this time. You feel its flank press lightly against your shoulder, steady and solid. The contact feels supportive, but you resist leaning too heavily. You want warmth, not dependency. Balance again. There is a memory that surfaces uninvited. A man laughing once about how sleep in winter could sneak up on you like a friend who stayed too long. You almost smile at the thought, then let it go. Smiling loosens muscles. Loosened muscles invite stillness. Your hands feel thick and slow inside your gloves. You test them again, moving each finger carefully. Sensation is reduced, but response remains. That is the line you watch most closely. As long as movement answers intention, you stay upright. The night feels endless but not hopeless. It feels heavy but manageable. What makes it dangerous is not its strength, but its patience. The cold does not rush you. It waits for you to choose poorly. You notice how quiet everything has become beneath the wind. The cattle barely move now. The world feels paused, as if holding its breath. That stillness presses on your thoughts, making them softer, slower. You counter it by shifting position again, reintroducing motion into the silence. Men who survived nights like this later struggled to explain why they stood when lying down would have felt better. They spoke about instinct, about habit, about remembering someone else's mistake. Often they simply said they did not trust comfort when it arrived too easily. You understand that now. Your knees burn again, sharper this time. You breathe through it, letting the discomfort peak and then settle. Pain fades more predictably than cold. You can work with pain. Cold is quieter. You allow your eyes to close briefly, then open them again. The pattern continues. Rest without surrender. Relief without collapse. Each cycle carries you forward without asking for hope or certainty. The ground remains beneath you solid and cold. The horse remains beside you warm and steady. The storm remains all around unbothered by your persistence. You remain standing. And in that simple refusal to lie down, repeated again and again through the long night, you keep the difference between sleep and silence very clear. For a brief stretch, the storm loosens its grip just enough for the sky to remember itself. Not fully, not clearly. But something shifts overhead, and the snow thins, if only for a moment. You lift your head slightly, sensing the change before you see it. The wind eases into a lower register. The pressure against your back softens. Above you, faint points of light appear. Not many. Just enough to remind you that the sky still exists. Stars look sharper in cold air, brittle, almost like they might snap if touched. You do not stare for long. Looking up invites imbalance. Still, the sight steadies you in a way nothing else has tonight. Men who later spoke about surviving the blizzard often mention moments like this, brief clearings that felt unreal, almost cruel. The storm did not end. It only paused, as if testing whether you would relax too much. You resist that temptation, now appreciating the clarity without trusting it. The cold deepens during these lulls. Without moving snow to insulate, the air feels heavier, denser. You pull your shoulders inward, slightly tightening your posture. The stars fade again as quickly as they appeared, swallowed by drifting white. The sky closes. Your breath feels louder now in the quiet left behind. You listen to it carefully, matching its rhythm to the steady presence of the horse beside you. The animal does not react to the clearing. It stays where it is conserving energy. You take that as guidance and remain still, adjusting only when sensation demands it. The ground beneath your boots feels different now. Harder, more certain. Snow has packed itself into a firm crust, locking the shape of your stance in place. You lift one foot slowly, breaking the surface, then set it down again a few inches away. The sound echoes faintly in the lull, startling in its clarity. You pause, then resume breathing slowly. These quiet moments invite reflection, whether you want them or not. Your mind reaches for meaning. Why did the storm choose tonight? Why did winter wait so long to show itself? You do not chase answers. Questions waste warmth. You let them drift away unanswered. Your fingers ache again, sharper than before. You bring them out from under your arms, flexing them slowly in the cold air before tucking them back in. The brief exposure stings, then fades into a dull warmth. That contrast reassures you. Sensation remains. You feel taller during the clearing, more present, as if the world briefly acknowledges your effort. That feeling passes quickly. The wind returns, snow thickens, and the stars disappear completely. The night closes in again, familiar and relentless. Men who endured nights like this often said the quiet moments were harder than the loud ones. Silence leaves room for doubt. Noise keeps you occupied. You understand that now. The return of the wind almost feels like company. You settle back into your rhythm. Shift. Breathe. Check. Adjust. The pattern resumes without conscious thought. Your body knows it well now, even as fatigue weighs heavier with each repetition. Sleep brushes closer again during the darkness, encouraged by the brief glimpse of sky. You feel its pull and acknowledge it without yielding. You have learned the difference between rest and surrender. You keep rest shallow and controlled. The horse exhales slowly, steam blooming and fading. You match its pace, letting the sound guide you back into focus. Whatever reassurance the stars offered, the work continues here on the ground. The clearing leaves behind no promise, only a reminder. The world is still larger than this storm. That thought steadies you more than hope ever could. You remain where you are, upright and attentive, waiting through the dark for the next shift in wind, the next test of balance. The night continues, but you have already learned how to move inside it. The night stretches on and something subtle changes between you and the others nearby. No one speaks, no one signals. Yet you become aware of a shared understanding settling over the group, as real as the snow collecting at your feet. Everyone is conserving now. Movement is slower, adjustments are smaller, energy is spent only where it matters most. You feel it in the way the cattle have stopped shifting, entirely pressed flank to flank, creating a quiet wall of warmth and patience. You feel it in the way your horse no longer fidgets, stunts wide and grounded, trusting that standing still is the safest choice for now. And you feel it in yourself in the way your body has learned to do only what is necessary and nothing more. This kind of cooperation does not announce itself. It does not feel heroic. It feels practical. You're close enough to others to sense them without seeing them clearly. A shadow here, a breath there. The knowledge that someone else is enduring the same cold makes your own endurance feel steadier even without words. You shift your weight slightly, careful not to disturb the fragile equilibrium you've built. Your knees protest, then settle. Your shoulders sag for a moment before you draw them back in line. Every correction is smaller now, more refined. Earlier you fought the cold with motion, now you negotiate with it. The wind presses again, but its force feels familiar. You've learned its patterns, the way it rises and falls, the angles it favours. You angle your body just enough to let it slide past rather than strike directly. The bedroll at your back holds firm snow packed against it into a rough shield. There is comfort in routine even here. You touch the same place on your glove again, rough stitching, worn smooth by years of use. That texture is grounding. It reminds you of other nights, other hardships that eventually ended. This one will end too, even if you cannot yet imagine how. Your breath stays steady, quiet inside the scarf. You listen to it without effort now, the way you might listen to a familiar sound at home. The wind fills the rest of the world, but your breath marks your own small territory within it. At some point you realize that no one around you has moved in a long while. The stillness is intentional. Heat saved is heat kept. You follow suit, allowing yourself longer pauses between adjustments. Not so long that sensation fades, but long enough to let muscles rest properly. You feel a strange sense of trust settle in. Not optimism. Trust in the process you've built through the night. Trust that your body will warn you if something goes wrong. Trust that staying alert does not require tension every second. Sleep brushes close again, softer this time, almost respectful. You allow your eyes to close for a few breaths, confident now in your ability to return. When they open again, the world looks the same. That sameness is reassuring. The storm continues its patient work, but you're no longer reacting to every change. You're part of a quiet system now, human and animal bodies arranged for survival, sharing warmth, silence and time. No one speaks, no one needs to. You stand there together, conserving strength, letting the night pass through you, rather than over you, waiting for whatever comes next. Hunger arrives quietly without urgency, like a polite knock you almost miss. Your stomach tightens, then relaxes again, reminding you that fuel matters even when warmth feels more pressing. You think briefly about food, not as comfort, but as function. Fat, salt, something dense enough to burn slowly. You reach into your pocket with careful fingers, movements economical and precise. There is a small portion left, something greasy wrapped in cloth kept close to your body all night so it would not freeze solid. You unwrap it just enough to tear off a bite. The smell is strong, heavy and grounding. You chew slowly, deliberately letting the act itself warm you a little from the inside. Eating in cold like this is not satisfying. It is mechanical. You do not rush it. Rushing wastes heat and invites mistakes. Each swallow feels deliberate, sliding slowly down a throat already dry. You stop after a few bites, saving the rest. Too much food demands energy to digest. Balance again. Men who worked cattle in winter learned quickly that certain foods helped more than others. Grease lingered. Lean meat disappeared too fast. Sugar offered a brief lift, then nothing. These lessons passed quietly from hand to hand, rarely written down, remembered instead in habits like yours. You tuck the remaining food away carefully, returning it to its place near your ribs. You flex your fingers again afterward, checking sensation. The cold has not taken anything new while you were distracted. That small relief steadies you. Your breath changes slightly after eating warmer, deeper for a few moments. You take advantage of it, letting your shoulders relax just a little more. The warmth fades, but it leaves behind a subtle reserve, enough to carry you through another stretch. The cattle shift faintly as one animal nudges another, rearranging the cluster by inches. The movement sends a ripple of warmth outward. You adjust with it, stepping half a pace closer, then stopping. You're careful not to crowd them. Animals tolerate proximity better than pressure. Your thoughts wander again, slower, now heavier. Food does that. It invites rest. You respond by straightening your posture, re-engaging muscles, reminding your body that this is not the time for indulgence. You allow comfort only in measured doses. There is a strange intimacy in these small acts. Eating, breathing, standing, they strip life down to essentials. Cowboys who later described nights like this often said they remembered the taste of food more vividly than meals eaten at home. Hunger sharpens memory. Cold preserves it. You wipe your fingers on the cloth before tucking your hand back under your arm. Grease and cold do not mix well. Slippery fingers make poor decisions. You adjust your glove, making sure it sits properly, then return to stillness. The wind continues its steady push, but it feels less aggressive now, or perhaps you have simply learned how to meet it. You angle your shoulders again, letting it slide past rather than press directly. The bedroll at your back holds firm, snow packed tight against it. Sleep brushes close again, encouraged by the warmth from food. You allow your eyes to close briefly, counting breaths as you do. 1, 2, 3. You feel your head dip slightly, then correct it, opening your eyes before the weight pulls you further. Men who endured nights like this often said the hardest part was knowing when to stop resting. Too little rest drained strength. Too much invited disaster. You navigate that line carefully, now guided by sensation rather than thought. Your stomach settles. Hunger fades back into the background. Energy spreads slowly, quietly, like a coal buried deep under ash. You guard it, careful not to waste it on unnecessary movement or fear. The night remains long, the storm remains indifferent. But inside you something steadier has taken hold. Not hope, not confidence, just a quiet understanding of how to continue. You breathe, you stand, you wait. Your dreams do not arrive the way dreams usually do. There is no clear boundary, no gentle slide from waking into something softer. Instead, images leak in sideways, overlapping the cold and the wind and the weight of your own body. You are still standing, still breathing, yet parts of your mind begin to wander without asking permission. You see things that do not belong here. A fence line stretching into warmth, a room lit from the inside, a hand passing you a cup you can almost feel. These images come without story, without context. They hover, then dissolve the moment you notice them. You do not chase them. You have learned by now that attention is currency and you spend it carefully. Your body reacts before your mind does. A slight sag in your knees, a softening in your shoulders. You correct it immediately, straightening just enough to pull yourself back into the present. The movement feels heavy, as if you are pushing against water rather than air. Fatigue has a weight to it now. This is the stage many men later described with uncertainty. Not fear, not calm, something in between. A blurred state where waking and dreaming share the same space. You experience it as a quiet disconnection, as if your thoughts have stepped a few inches away from your body and are observing from there. You ground yourself again. Breath first, in through the nose, out through the mouth, slow, controlled. You feel the cold bite briefly sharp enough to clear the haze, then settle back into its familiar pressure. You welcome that clarity, even though it hurts. The horse beside you shifts, stamping once, then stills. The vibration travels up through your boots into your legs. It feels louder than it should, but you are grateful for it. The movement pulls you fully back into yourself. You adjust your stance again, widening your base, redistributing weight. The night feels thicker now. Not darker, thicker, as if the air itself resists movement. Snow continues to slide across the ground, but you barely register it. Your awareness is narrowed to what matters most. Sensation, balance, breath. You catch yourself smiling faintly at nothing. The expression feels foreign on your face. You let it fade immediately. Emotional softness invites physical softness. You cannot afford either right now. There is a moment when you're not sure if your eyes are open or closed. The world looks the same either way. White, dark, moving. You test it by blinking deliberately, feeling the slight resistance of frost at your lashes. The sensation confirms that you're still here, still choosing awareness. Men who survived nights like this often spoke about how memory fractured during these hours. They could recall the beginning of the storm clearly. They remembered the aftermath vividly. But the middle dissolved into impressions rather than events. You understand why. This part of the night does not leave neat records. It leaves feelings. Your breath grows slower again, deeper this time. You monitor it carefully, making sure it does not drift too far into ease. Ease is seductive here. Ease feels like permission. You do not accept it. You perform your quiet inventory once more. Fingers, toes, jaw, neck. Everything responds if sluggishly. That is enough. You let the check end there rather than pushing further. Overchecking becomes obsession. Obsession drains energy. The wind changes pitch again, barely noticeable unless you are listening closely. You are. The shift tells you nothing useful, but the act of noticing keeps you alert. Attention itself has become your primary tool. You allow another brief dip into rest, eyes closing for what feels like a heartbeat. In that instant, an image flashes. You're lying down, warm, finished. The image feels complete in a way nothing else has tonight. That completeness scares you more than the cold ever could. Your eyes snap open, your spine straightens sharply. You inhale deeply, chest expanding cold air burning just enough to bring urgency rushing back. Your heart beats harder for a few moments, then settles. Lesson reinforced. Men who endured these nights often said the body tried to negotiate. It offered comfort in exchange for stillness. It offered peace in exchange for vigilance. You refuse the terms without anger, without argument. Simply no. The cattle murmur softly again, a low sound that vibrates rather than travels. It reminds you that life continues around you, that you're not alone in this suspended state. You draw quiet strength from that knowledge. Your thoughts slow, further becoming simpler. There is no room now for stories or plans, only immediate choices. Stand or sag, breathe or rush, adjust or freeze. You make each choice deliberately one at a time. Sleep remains close, no longer gentle, no longer polite. It presses. You meet that pressure with routine, breath, shift, check, repeat. The pattern holds even as fatigue deepens. The storm has not beaten you, not yet. But it has stripped you down to essentials, leaving no space for illusion. What remains is attention and restraint. You hold on to both quietly as the night continues to stretch on, waiting for the moment when something changes, when the balance tips in either direction. For now you remain standing inside the blur, awake enough to choose, tired enough to understand how close the edge truly is. You wake without waking. There is no clear moment where sleep ends and awareness begins. Instead, you surface slowly, like coming up through dark water, unsure how deep you were or how long you stayed there. Your body feels heavier now, as if gravity has quietly increased while you were not paying attention. For a few seconds, nothing makes sense. You do not know how long you've been standing. You do not know if it is still night or something else entirely. The storm sounds the same. The cold feels the same. That sameness is what confuses you most. You steady yourself by checking what you can feel. Boots pressing into packed snow, cold air scraping your throat, the horse's flank against your shoulder warm and solid. Those anchors pull you back into alignment. You straighten slightly, forcing your spine to stack itself again. The effort sends a dull ache through your back that feels almost reassuring. Time has become unreliable. Your sense of it slips easily now, stretching and compressing without warning. Cowboys who lived through storms like this often said later that morning arrived without announcement. No gradual brightening, no birdsong, just a realization that something had shifted and you were still there to notice it. You blink several times, deliberately breaking frost at your lashes. Your vision clears a little. The world remains white and moving, but it feels marginally less hostile. Or perhaps you're simply more used to it. You do not assume improvement. Assumptions invite mistakes. Your legs feel stiff when you shift your weight. The stiffness is deeper now, lodged in joints rather than muscles. You bend one knee slowly, then the other, easing them back into cooperation. The movement feels clumsy, but it works. Blood moves. Sensation follows. You realize you've been holding your jaw tight again. You let it drop slightly, tongue resting against the roof of your mouth. The release sends a ripple of warmth through your face, brief but noticeable. You welcome it without chasing it. Nearby, someone mutters something unintelligible. The sound is low, half swallowed by wind. It tells you two important things. Other people are still upright, and voices still exist. You do not answer. Conversation would cost more than it gives right now. The cattle begin to shift more noticeably, hooves crunching against hardened snow. Not frantic. Purposeful. You feel the vibration travel through the ground and into your feet. The movement suggests a change, though you cannot yet name it. Animals often respond to things before humans register them consciously. You adjust your position to stay aligned with the group, stepping carefully to avoid losing balance. Your boots resist frozen stiff, but they obey. Each step feels deliberate, heavier than it should, but possible. Possible is enough. Your breath fogs differently now. The cloud lingers a fraction longer before tearing apart. You notice it without interpreting it. Observation without conclusion has become your safest habit. Your thoughts are slow to form, and when they do, they arrive stripped of decoration. Simple statements. Cold. Stand. Breathe. Stay. You do not argue with them. You follow. There is a moment when you wonder if this is what morning feels like in a storm like this. Not light, but permission. A subtle easing that allows movement without immediate punishment. You do not test that idea yet. You wait for confirmation from your body. You flex your fingers again. The motion feels thick but responsive. You press your toes into the ground, feeling resistance. The signals come back intact if muted. Relief passes through you, quiet and contained. Men who endured nights like this often said the hardest part of mourning was trusting it. After hours of punishment, the body expects more. You find yourself wary, now suspicious of any change that feels like improvement. The wind shifts slightly, not stopping, but changing direction. Snow still moves, but the angle is different. You turn with it, adjusting your stance, keeping your back shielded. These adjustments feel automatic, now guided by habit rather than thought. Your head dips briefly, fatigue pulling downward again. You catch it immediately, lifting your chin, resetting posture. The effort costs more than it did earlier. You feel that cost clearly, but you pay it anyway. You're not finished yet. Not safe, not warm, but you're still upright. Still aware enough to make choices. Still capable of correcting before drifting too far. Whatever this moment is, morning or not, it finds you standing. And that matters. The first thing you do is count. Not numbers exactly, but parts of yourself. Fingers curl and uncurl inside stiff gloves, one hand then the other. The motion is slow, awkward, but it completes. You press your toes downward inside your boots, feeling for resistance. There it is. Dull, present. You shift your weight and test your ankles, rolling them gently to remind them of their purpose. This check has become ritual, now performed without thought, guided by quiet necessity. It is not reassurance you are after, it is information. What still answers when asked? What needs attention before it disappears? Your hands feel swollen, thick with cold and time. Sensation comes back in patches rather than smoothly. A prickling warmth creeps in along the edges, uncomfortable, but welcome. You do not rub too hard. Too much friction too quickly can hurt more than it helps. You keep movement slow, coaxing circulation rather than demanding it. Your toes ache next to deeper pain that blooms slowly. You lift one foot, then the other, stamping lightly to break the crust of snow that has hardened around your boots. The sound feels louder than it should, echoing in the narrow world around you. You pause after each stamp, letting sensations settle before continuing. Men who came through storms like this often said the quiet damage frightened them more than the obvious kind. Frost did not always announce itself with pain. Sometimes it arrived gently, stealing feeling first, then movement. That is why this counting matters. Not fear, awareness. You flex your jaw again, feeling stiffness ease slightly. Your ears sting beneath your hat. You tilt your head, letting blood move, then return it to center. Every part of you feels used, worn down by the long hours of standing and adjusting. But nothing feels lost. The cattle shift again, more noticeably now. Hooves crunch. Bodies separate by inches, then settle again. The movement sends warmth outward, uneven but helpful. You step closer, careful to maintain space while taking advantage of the heat. You keep your balance centered, ready to move if needed. Your breath feels stronger now, fuller. Not warm, but less desperate. You take a few deeper inhales, then return to shallow ones. You do not want to shock your lungs after the night they have endured. You listen to the sound of your own breathing, making sure it remains steady. The horse beside you lowers its head and shakes slightly, snow falling from its mane in a soft cascade. The movement startles you just enough to sharpen your focus. You welcome it. You place a hand against its shoulder again, grounding yourself in the familiar warmth. You think briefly about the men who did not stand up again after nights like this. The thought passes quickly, not dwelling, not sentimental. Survival does not leave much room for reflection in the moment. There will be time for that later, if later arrives. You adjust your bedroll, shaking loose some of the snow that has hardened into a shell. It cracks softly as it breaks free. You leave the rest in place. Insulation still matters. You retuck the edge where the wind has found a gap, restoring the barrier you built hour by hour. Your legs feel more cooperative now, stiffness easing into something workable. You bend at the knees again, testing depth, then straighten. The movement is slow but controlled. That control reassures you more than speed ever could. You count again, fingers, toes, breath. Everything answers, not eagerly but honestly. The storm continues to move around you, no less cold, no less present. But you have changed inside it. You're no longer just enduring. You're assessing, preparing for the next step, whatever it turns out to be. For now, you remain where you are standing, checking, adjusting. Each small movement confirms that you're still capable of moving when the time comes, and as long as you can still count yourself piece by piece, you know you're not finished yet. The land begins to reveal what the night has taken, not all at once, slowly, reluctantly, as if it is unsure whether you're ready to see it yet. Shapes emerge through thinning snow darker patches against the white. At first they look like shadows. Then you recognize them for what they are. Cattle lie scattered across the plain, bodies, half-buried outlines softened by drifting snow. Some are close. Others stretch out into the distance, frozen in positions that suggest movement, interrupted rather than rest chosen. You do not approach them immediately. You already know what you'll find. Standing still feels easier than confirming it. The living cattle move differently now. They separate more easily, no longer press so tightly together. Some nudge the fallen ones without urgency, then move on. Animals understand loss without ceremony. They respond to what still moves. You shift your stance again, careful where you place your boots. The ground feels uneven now, altered by the night. Snow hides dips and ridges that did not exist yesterday. Each step requires attention. You lift your feet higher than usual, breaking through crusted layers that resist and then give way suddenly. Men who work the range knew storms like this could erase fortunes in a single night. Entire herds lost where they stood, fences buried, trails gone. The scale of it often did not sink in until movement resumed. Standing still through the worst preserved life. Walking afterward revealed the cost. You glance down at your own legs, surprised again that they still hold you. Fatigue weighs heavy, but it's no longer overwhelming. Purpose has returned. With it comes responsibility. There will be work to do when the storm finally loosens its grip. Loss to account for, survivors to gather. Your breath fogs steadily now, less frantic, more controlled. You take that as permission to move a little more. You step away from the shelter of the cattle just enough to look around, then return to warmth. You do not stray far. The storm is not finished yet. The horse lifts its head and snorts ears forward, now alert in a different way. It senses change. You follow its gaze, scanning the shifting white. Visibility improves by inches, not miles, but inches are enough to begin understanding where you are. You feel a strange mix of relief and heaviness settle into your chest. Relief that you are still standing. Heaviness at the sight of those who are not. Cowboys later spoke of this moment as the true beginning of the blizzard, when survival gave way to reckoning. You feel that transition now. Your hands ache as sensation continues to return. The prickling intensifies, uncomfortable but alive. You rotate your wrists, slowly easing stiffness. Pain sharpens briefly, then dulls. You breathe through it, letting the feeling spread rather than fighting it. Snow continues to fall, but lighter now, drifting rather than driving. The wind still moves, but its force has softened. You do not trust the change yet. Storms like this retreat slowly, often circling back with little warning. You adjust your bedroll again, preparing for movement rather than rest. The night posture no longer serves you fully. You shake your shoulders, roll your neck, waking muscles that have been held too long in one shape. Each movement feels stiff but possible. Nearby another cowboy steps into view, face obscured by ice, and scarf eyes wide with the same mixture of exhaustion and disbelief you feel. You nod once. No words. Words are unnecessary. The nod says enough. The land is quieter now, but not peaceful. It holds the weight of what has happened. You take it in slowly, one breath at a time, careful not to rush understanding. You remain standing, surrounded by evidence of endurance and loss, aware that sleep is no longer the danger it was hours ago. The danger now is forgetting how close the edge truly came. For the moment, you stay where you are, letting the scene settle into you, preparing yourself for the long day that will follow this night. Later, much later, people will ask what it was like to sleep through a night like that. They will expect stories about the wind, the cold, the fear. They will expect drama. What they rarely expect is how quiet it felt afterward, how carefully the memories has to be handled so they did not break apart. You do not think about telling stories now. Right now, you are still inside the aftermath where words have not yet formed. The night has passed, but it has not released you. It lingers in your muscles, in the stiffness of your joints, in the way your body hesitates before each movement, unsure whether it is safe to trust the world again. You take a few steps, slow and deliberate, testing the ground ahead. Snow crunches underfoot, packed and uneven. Each sound feels louder than it should, as if the silence left behind by the storm is amplifying everything. You pause after every few steps, letting balance settle, letting sensation catch up. Nearby men move quietly among the cattle, checking, counting, stopping when they need to. No one rushes. Rushing belongs to warmer days. Now everything is measured. Even grief waits its turn. You notice how little anyone says. A glance, a nod, a raised hand. Communication has simplified itself. There is comfort in that simplicity. Words would only complicate things right now. Your breath still carries the weight of the night. Each inhale feels deeper, fuller, but also cautious, as if your lungs are remembering something they do not want to repeat. You give them time, breathing slowly, letting warmth return at its own pace. You adjust your gloves, working fingers into motion again. The prickling has softened into a steady ache, manageable now. You flex your hands and feel strength returning in increments rather than all at once. That gradual return feels honest. Nothing about this morning is sudden. There are conversations you will have later, stories that will be told differently depending on who remembers them. Some men will speak about how close they came to lying down. Others will insist they never felt tempted. You already know how unreliable memory can be when the body's pushed this far. You decide not to argue with future versions of the night. Whatever people need to believe later will be their own business. Right now, you focus on what is directly in front of you. The next step, the next breath, the next movement that proves your body still belongs to you. This focus feels grounding, almost peaceful despite the losses surrounding you. The horse stays close moving when you move, stopping when you stop. Its presence remains steady, unremarkable in the best possible way. You place a hand against its neck again, feeling warmth, feeling life. That contact reassures you more than anything spoken could. Snow continues to fall lightly, reshaping the ground again, erasing some of the sharp edges left by the night. The land seems eager to cover itself, to smooth over what happened. You understand the impulse. You also know the marks will remain underneath. As you stand there, breathing, moving, enduring the quiet after the storm, you realize something important. Sleep was never the enemy. Forgetting yourself was. Losing track of breath, balance, sensation. Sleep only became dangerous when it asked for more than it was allowed. That understanding settles into you gently, without fanfare. It will shape how you think about winter nights from now on, how you arrange your body. When the cold presses in, how you listen to your own limits. You take another step forward, then another, leaving shallow tracks behind you. The storm has already begun to erase them, but you do not mind. You know where you have been. And you know, without needing to say it aloud, that this night will follow you for the rest of your life, not as a story to impress, but as a quiet reminder of how thin the line can be between rest and disappearance. The lessons do not arrive all at once. They settle in slowly, like cold that lingers long after you step indoors. Even as the day unfolds and movement becomes easier, the night stays with you, shaping small decisions without asking permission. How you stand, how you rest, how you listen to your own body when the temperature drops. Winter will never feel casual again. As you walk farther from where you stood through the night, you notice how carefully everyone moves now. Bedrolls are packed differently. Gear is checked twice. People pause longer before sitting, before lying down, before trusting the ground. No one says why. They do not need to. Experience has rewritten habits more effectively than any warning ever could. You remember how easily sleep tried to claim you out there, how reasonable it felt at the worst moments. That memory sharpens your caution. You realize that survival on the plains is not just about toughness. It is about judgment made while exhausted, about choices made when the mind wants relief more than accuracy. Shelter will matter more from now on. So will preparation. You have seen what happens when weather behaves itself for too long, when routines soften and confidence grows careless. From this point forward, winter will always be treated as capable of changing its mind without notice. You watch someone shake out a blanket, knocking loose chunks of ice before folding it carefully differently than before. You do the same with your own aware now of how snow and fabric interact, how moisture hides where you least expect it. These details matter. They will matter again. There is talk quiet and practical about changing how herds are handled when cold threatens. Shorter distances, earlier movements, more caution. Not everyone will listen. Some lessons always fade faster than others, but many will. Enough to matter. You feel stronger now, though fatigue still lingers beneath the surface. Muscles ache in a way that promises recovery rather than collapse. You stretch carefully, feeling stiffness give way. Each movement feels earned. Nothing comes easily today, and that feels right. You notice how the night has changed your relationship with rest. When you finally do sit, you stay upright. When you lie down later, you test the ground, the air, your own awareness, before letting yourself relax fully. Sleep will return, but it will no longer be something you give yourself without conditions. Men who endure nights like this rarely speak about bravery afterward. They speak about timing, about listening, about knowing when to stop pushing and when to refuse comfort. You find yourself agreeing silently with that assessment even before the words exist. As the hours pass and the storm becomes something people talk about rather than something you're inside, you feel a quiet resolve settle into you. The plains are not cruel, they are honest. They give warnings, but they do not repeat them loudly. You carry that understanding forward as the day moves on, as work resumes, as life reshapes itself around loss and continuation. The night does not fade, it integrates. And somewhere deep in your body a new rule has taken hold, simple and firm. When winter presses in, you never fully let go of yourself. Not again. Stories begin to form as distance grows between you and the night. Not dramatic ones, not polished. Just fragments passed along when the workday slows, or when someone stares a little too long at the horizon. You hear them take shape around you, already changing in the telling. Some people talk about cowboys sleeping peacefully under the stars during the blizzard, wrapped in blankets like figures from a painting. The image is tidy, romantic. You recognize it immediately as something invented after the fact. Real nights like that do not arrange themselves so neatly. You know what sleep actually looked like out there. Bent knees, half-closed eyes, muscles held just tight enough to keep you upright, a body negotiating with cold minute by minute. There was nothing peaceful about it. There was only restraint. You do not argue when you hear the myths forming. You let them exist. People need shapes that are easier to hold. The truth is less cooperative. It resists simplification the way the wind resisted you all night. As the days pass, you notice how the story shifts depending on who tells it. Some remember courage. Others remember luck. A few insist preparation was everything. Each version contains a piece of the night, but none of them contain all of it. You keep your own version quietly stored in sensation rather than words. You realize that even memory itself behaves like weather. It smooths sharp edges. It fills in gaps. It erases tracks. What remains is rarely precise. You do not try to correct it. Accuracy mattered during the storm. Later survival matters more. When you lie down properly for the first time since the blizzard indoors warms, still your body refuses at first. Muscles twitch, breath catches, sleep feels suspicious. You stay awake longer than expected, listening to the absence of wind, waiting for cold that does not arrive. Eventually sleep comes, deep, heavy, uninterrupted. When you wake, the contrast feels almost shocking. You understand then how thin the boundary was out there, how easily rest could have tipped into something final. That understanding stays with you. Years later, when winter returns early or lingers too long, you find yourself adjusting without thinking. You keep boots on longer. You rest in stages. You trust discomfort over ease. People notice, sometimes ask why. You shrug. Some lessons do not translate well. The myths continue to grow anyway. Cowboys as figures of effortless endurance. Sleep as something taken lightly. You let those stories pass. They belong to a different need than the one you carry. You know that real survival was quieter than legend, smaller, made of dozens of unremarkable choices stacked carefully on top of each other. Stand a little longer, breathe a little slower, do not lie down yet. That truth does not shine, it does not impress, but it lasts. The last night before spring does not announce itself. There is no marker in the sky, no warmth you can point to and claim as proof. Instead, it arrives quietly folded into routine, carrying the weight of everything that came before it. You notice it only because your body remembers the other night so clearly. You lie down this time, fully, on purpose. The ground is cold but not threatening. Your muscles release in stages, cautious at first, then deeper. You listen for the wind that once never stopped. It is there, faint and distant, no longer pressing itself into your bones. You keep your boots on anyway. Habit lingers longer than danger. Your breathing settles into something natural again. Not controlled, not monitored, just present. Each inhale fills your chest without burning. Each exhale leaves without freezing against fabric. This simplicity feels almost unreal after everything your body learned to manage. You think about that night without trying to. The standing, the counting, the refusal to lie down when lying down felt kind. Those memories surface without sharpness now. They have softened into understanding rather than fear. You let them pass through you, gently. Sleep approaches differently this time. It does not pull. It waits. You accept it when it arrives, trusting that your body knows the difference now. As you drift, you feel gratitude without drama. Gratitude for sensation, for breath, for the quiet strength of simply staying upright when it mattered most. The plains rest beneath you unchanged and patient. Winter has loosened its grip, but it has not vanished. It never truly does. It only steps back, reminding you to remember. You close your eyes fully now. There is no need to keep them half open, no need to negotiate. Your body sinks into rest that feels earned rather than stolen, and as sleep finally takes you, it carries no risk, no warning, only the deep calm of survival complete. Now everything slows. Your breathing lengthens, soft and unforced. The images of wind and snow begin to fade, replaced by quieter sensations. The weight of your body against the ground, the gentle rise and fall of your chest, the steady knowledge that you are safe where you are. The night no longer asks anything of you. There is nothing to monitor, nothing to count, nothing to resist. Muscles loosen completely one by one, releasing the tension they held for so long. Your hands rest easily, your legs grow heavy. Your thoughts thin out until they barely register at all. You do not need to replay the storm anymore. It has already given you what it had to give. What remains now is rest deep and uncomplicated. The kind of rest that repairs rather than demands. If your mind wanders, let it wander. If it empties, let it empty. There's no right way to fall asleep here. There is only permission. The plains are quiet now. The wind has moved on. Morning will come when it comes without effort from you. For now, there is only warmth, stillness, and the slow comfort of knowing that you endured. sleep comes easily. Sweet dreams,